Before the world learned Prince was dead, something strange had already happened. A private jet, an emergency landing, a rushed medical response, and people close to him quietly asking the same question: what's wrong with Prince? Because for decades, Prince built an image that felt almost untouchable, private, controlled, brilliant, mysterious. A man who seemed larger than celebrity itself. But behind the music, behind the performances, behind the carefully protected image, something was changing. And in April of 2016, that hidden struggle would suddenly become impossible to ignore. Because inside Paisley Park, his massive Minnesota estate, Prince Rogers Nelson would be found unresponsive, alone. And what investigators uncovered afterward would shock millions of people around the world. Victim: Prince Rogers Nelson. Location: Paisley Park, Chanhassen, Minnesota. Date: April 21, 2016. Age: 57. Status: officially ruled accidental overdose. But emotionally, the story never felt that simple. Some celebrity deaths feel distant, others feel personal. Prince's death felt different because for decades, he seemed almost impossible to break. He wasn't just a musician. He was a producer, a songwriter, a performer, a perfectionist, an icon. A man whose creativity felt endless. From Purple Rain, When Doves Cry, Kiss, 1999, Little Red Corvette. Prince didn't just make music. He created worlds. Entire identities. Entire eras. And unlike many celebrities, Prince guarded his private life obsessively. Very little escaped his control. Interviews were rare. Personal details were limited. Relationships stayed hidden. Struggles stayed hidden too. Which meant, when signs of trouble finally appeared, people didn't fully understand how serious things had become. By 2015, those close to Prince reportedly noticed changes. Not dramatic at first. Subtle things. Fatigue, weight loss, physical discomfort. Some people later claimed he appeared exhausted. Others said he looked fragile. But Prince kept working, because stopping wasn't really part of who he was. Music remained his entire identity. He performed constantly, recorded constantly, worked constantly. Inside Paisley Park, his enormous studio complex, Prince reportedly spent countless hours creating music late into the night. For him, work and existence were almost inseparable. But behind the scenes, there were growing concerns about pain. Physical pain. Years of performing had reportedly damaged his body. Hip problems, chronic discomfort, dependence on pain management. And according to later investigations, that may have started a dangerous chain reaction. April 2016. Prince is still performing publicly. Fans attending concerts notice something unusual. At times, he appears energetic. At other moments, he seems weak, distracted, unwell. But nobody fully understands what's happening. Then comes April 15, 2016. And suddenly, everything changes. Prince is traveling aboard a private jet after a performance in Atlanta. Somewhere during the flight, an emergency situation develops. The plane suddenly makes an unscheduled landing in Illinois. Medical personnel rush to the airport. Reports begin spreading almost immediately. But confusion surrounds everything. Because Prince's team initially minimizes the incident. Publicly, they suggest dehydration or flu-like symptoms. But behind the scenes, people are becoming deeply concerned. Because witnesses later describe Prince appearing physically vulnerable, weak, disoriented, unstable, and for someone whose image was built around control, that vulnerability shocks people around him. The days after the emergency landing become increasingly strange. Friends reportedly urge Prince to seek professional medical treatment. Some accounts claim people close to him feared he was struggling with dependency issues. Others later suggest he resisted outside intervention. And throughout all of it, Prince remains deeply private. Very few people truly understand what's happening inside Paisley Park. Because Paisley Park wasn't just a studio. It was a fortress, a creative empire, a place Prince controlled completely. And that isolation may have made his final days even more dangerous. April 20th, 2016, the day before Prince dies. According to reports, people inside Paisley Park are worried. Prince reportedly appears exhausted. At one point, there are discussions about getting him medical help quickly, but details remain fragmented. Some witnesses later provide conflicting timelines. Others remain silent publicly. And inside the confusion, the final hours become difficult to fully reconstruct, which only deepens the mystery surrounding the case. Then comes April 21st. Morning. Paisley Park. Inside the massive studio complex, something is wrong. Prince reportedly fails to appear for scheduled activity. Concern begins growing. Eventually, staff members search the building. And then, inside an elevator area, Prince is discovered unresponsive. Emergency responders arrive rapidly. CPR begins immediately. But the situation is catastrophic. At 10:07 a.m., Prince Rogers Nelson is pronounced dead, age 57, and within minutes, shock spreads around the world. Because for millions of people, Prince didn't feel mortal, he felt timeless. News coverage explodes instantly. Fans gather outside Paisley Park. Purple lights illuminate buildings across cities worldwide. Radio stations play Prince non-stop. People cry openly, not just because an artist died, but because Prince represented individuality itself. Freedom, creativity, mystery, expression, and now, suddenly, he was gone. Almost immediately, questions begin. What happened inside Paisley Park? Why did the emergency plane landing happen days earlier? Was Prince seriously ill? And perhaps most importantly, was anyone around him aware of how dangerous the situation had become? Investigators begin examining evidence. Inside Paisley Park, authorities reportedly discover prescription medications. But another disturbing issue quickly emerges. Some pills are allegedly mislabeled. And according to investigators, one of the substances involved was fentanyl, a synthetic opioid so powerful, even tiny amounts can become deadly. That revelation shocks the public, because fentanyl would later become part of a much larger national crisis. But in 2016, many Americans still didn't fully understand how lethal it could be. The investigation becomes increasingly complicated. Questions emerge about prescription sourcing, medical oversight, possible dependency, and who may have supplied substances to Prince. Authorities reportedly investigate individuals connected to medications found at Paisley Park. But proving criminal responsibility becomes difficult. Eventually, official findings conclude Prince died from an accidental fentanyl overdose. Legally, the case reaches a conclusion. But emotionally, many people remain unsettled, because Prince spent decades controlling every detail of his image. And yet, his final days appear filled with secrecy, confusion, and hidden suffering. For some fans, that's the hardest part. The idea that someone who gave so much emotionally through music may have been suffering privately in ways almost nobody fully recognized. Because Prince rarely showed weakness publicly, he protected his image relentlessly, and perhaps that protection also isolated him. Even years later, people continue debating aspects of the case. Some question, who supplied the drugs? Others focus on the people surrounding Prince during his final days. And many still wonder, could this tragedy have been prevented? Because warning signs existed. The emergency landing, the visible exhaustion, the growing concern from people close to him. But somewhere between fame, privacy, pain, and silence, the danger kept growing. The death of Prince remains haunting because it feels deeply human beneath the celebrity. A man admired by millions, surrounded by success, surrounded by talent, yet possibly isolated inside his own world. And maybe the most unsettling part of all is how hidden the struggle remained until the very end. Because somewhere behind the purple lights, the music, the genius, and the mystery, there was a man quietly falling apart. And by the time the world realized it, it was already too late. What do you think about the mysterious final days of Prince? Do you believe fame and isolation contributed to his tragic ending? Or do you think important questions still remain unanswered? Let me know in the comments. And subscribe for more true crime investigations, celebrity mysteries, cold cases, and documentary-style stories. Because some stories don't end when the music stops. Sometimes, that's when the real mystery begins.